Let's move on to the next lesson in data cleaning, focused on parsing dates. If we go ahead and create the Kaggle notebook and copy it into our own accounts, you'll get something that looks like this. To get started, you can go ahead as usual to just load that first set of libraries and load the data set. In this case, we're using a data set that has information about landslides that occurred in a 10-year period worldwide. So what is it that we're talking about today? We're talking about dates, parsing dates and times. First thing we can do is go ahead and just look at our data set here. You can see that we have 23 columns. If I scroll to the right, you can see different types of information about each of these landslides. You can see that this is 5 rows, the first 5 rows. You can see various types of information here. There is a column in this data set called date. And date in this format here, it looks to be in the American style where you have the month. So this is March / the day, the 2nd of March / 07, which is 2007. And the point here is that the way this information is contained in the pandas data frame right now is simply as a string or an object, so if we go ahead and print this, you can see that, the first 5 rows of this column of date are in fact objects. But we want Python to recognize that these are beyond just objects. We want Python and pandas to know that this is March 3rd of 2007, and this is April 6th and April 14th and April 15th. Because when we do that, Python and pandas are able to plot things properly. You're able to do these time series based transformations, which you'll see later are really important. And it's just overall something very useful to have. And so that process of converting this, or date timestamp, as you might call it, is to convert it or parse it and convert it into a date time object. Here you can read about what a date time object is in Python. Down here, you can see that when you run this date time for this column, you can see that it's date type or data type 0. In the NumPy documentation, 0 is the code for object. And so into this next subsection, it's really going to discuss what are the values, what are the good reasons why you should convert timestamps into a date time object. And one example is the differences in the way date time objects are expressed. Sometimes you have these slashes, sometimes you have dashes. In most of the rest of the world, you use a different notation. You actually put the days first and the months second instead of the other way around. So there are different ways that's done. And in Python and pandas, you have a function called toDateTime, which is, in this first example, is going to convert. It's basically going to create a new column called date_parsed, which is going to use the toDateTime function. We're specifying what format we are, month, day, year, and it's converting the column date into a new column called date_parsed. So here you can see in this new column, you have 2007-03-02. This is a standardized way that pandas is expressing this date time. You can see that it is a date time 64 timestamp. Now we can interact in date time formats a little with more power, and we'll look at that, like I said, in future videos. Here's a simple example where here we're creating a new column called day of month landslides. We're taking landslides date parsed and using .dt and .day to extract exactly what day of the month these things happened. So you can extract hour and day of the week and all kinds of different attributes of time series data once you get it converted into a date time object. So here are the first 4 rows. You can see the 2nd, the 22nd, the 6th, the 14th, the 5th. These are the days of the month that thing happened. Here in the next subsections, it's really, you can read through this in more detail, but what it's doing is saying, okay, let's just do a double check to see what days of the month these landslides generally happen. And if it's a relatively even distribution, that means that we probably did it right. So across the entire data set here, you can see we've used Seaborn to plot this. You can see that it's relatively constant across the month, except for the 31st, which is a bit lower, which is just due to the fact that not every month has 31 days. This is, it says, it looks like we did everything correctly. This makes good sense. Parsing dates has its own exercises. If you want to solidify that knowledge, please check those out. And in future videos, we'll dive into this a little bit more with time series data from buildings.